Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check.
All right, I'll give everyone a chance to take their seats. I know, yeah, it's like, would you like fries with that? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 60th meeting of the Planning and Housing Committee. First, I would like to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded and never surrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. I know that we have regrets from Councillors Brockington and Kavanagh. I think there's indication that Councillor Johnson may be a little late to join us, but could I ask for a roll call, please, to the coordinator?
Councillor Curry?
Here.
Councillor Dudas?
I'm here.
Councillor Johnson? Councillor Kelly?
Present.
Councillor Kitts?
Here.
Councillor Lowe?
Here.
Councillor Tierney?
Present.
Councillor Troster?
Here.
Vice Chair Gower?
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 5.1 to 5.4 and 5.6 and 5.7 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who are specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on February 25th, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Are the minutes of our 59th meeting, February 4th, 2026 confirmed? Thank you. So postponements and deferrals, we have delegations to speak to the issuance of the N5s at the Landlord and Tenant Board in Ottawa, so we'll hold that one. There is an official plan amendment being sought, Leitrim East Urban Expansion Area. I think staff have recommended that we refuse that. Did anyone wish for that item to be held? Nope. Is that item recommendation carried? Thank you. There is the zoning bylaw amendment for 2510, 2502, and other properties, Saint Laurent Boulevard. We don't have any delegations. We haven't received any correspondence. The applicants have signed up to speak if they need to. Did members wish to receive a presentation or have this one held? No. To Robert Tran and Greg Winters with Novatech, I don't know if you're in the room, but if the committee is prepared, they're online. If the committee is prepared to carry this, did you still wish to speak?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, is this item carried? Thank you. We'll move on. The official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 550 Wanakee Road. I know that there is a motion that Councillor King has brought. Councillor Kitts will be making that on his behalf. There is one delegation who is prepared to speak if the committee isn't prepared to carry this one. Did anyone want to have this one held or receive a presentation on it? No, the motion is fairly straightforward, I think, and should enjoy support. Do we mind if we just bring that out now? Councillor Kitts or King, do you have a motion for us?
And just for the sake of time, I'll just read in the resolutions. Therefore, be it resolved that Council affirm the importance of continued collaboration between the City and the School Board, including engagement with the Community Transit Services, Canada Land Company, and the Councillor's Office through the Road Modification Agreement and Site Plan Approval process. Be it further resolved that this collaboration be undertaken with a view to appropriately addressing traffic operations, access, and safety considerations associated with the proposed school site, including bus lay-by and pickup and drop-off operations, with particular attention to minimizing impacts on Wakanee Road.
Thank you, Councillor King. I'm just looking to the applicants to see whether or not there are any concerns with that motion that they'd like to address, and if so, we can hold it. You're good? Okay. You don't need to address it? Perfect. Thank you. So, colleagues, is that motion carried? And is the item carried? Thank you very much. So my understanding was that the representatives from the school board, Luc Poulain and Iqbal Mohamed Katani, with the Conseil des Écoles Catholiques de Centre-Est, only needed to speak if the committee was not prepared to carry this. So I bypassed them. There is items 5.4 and 5.5, which are the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 110 and 116 York Street and part of 137 George Street, and the associated heritage permit for alterations at 110 and 116 York Street. We don't have any delegates signed up to speak to this one. Did any members wish to receive a presentation or have this one held? I don't see that that's the case. The applicants from Fauteuil, Claridge, and Neuf, if we're prepared to carry this item, did you still wish to speak? No. Colleagues, are the staff recommendations on 5.4 carried? And are the staff recommendations on item 5.5 carried? Thank you very much. We have a zoning bylaw amendment at 1146 Snow Street. There are no delegations to speak to the item. Did members wish to have this one held for a presentation? One question? Okay. Do you want to do it now or would you prefer? No? Okay. We'll have a quick question from Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, just real quick. There's concerns about traffic. That's a site plan related issue. This is outside the zoning realm of things.
Yes, Chair, any design-related considerations with respect to traffic or layout would be dealt with at site plan. That's correct.
Okay, great. I'll work with the community on that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. To the applicants, I believe Evan Saunders and John Blakely are here or online from FOTEN. If the committee is prepared to carry this, did you still wish to speak? Nope. So is this, are the report recommendations carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. There's a zoning bylaw amendment for 1670 10th Line Road. There are 4 delegations who are signed up to speak to this one, so we will hold it. And then there is an additional item, correction to the new zoning bylaw. Vice Chair Gower, sorry, is it the will of committee that we add that to the agenda? I think it'll be fairly quick and straightforward. And as a matter of fact, I'll ask the Vice Chair to introduce that now.
Okay. Whereas a small number of consolidation errors have been identified, where zoning bylaw amendments to zoning bylaw 2008-250 were not carried forward into the draft zoning bylaw, and whereas staff are seeking authority to make these corrections prior to third reading of the zoning bylaw to alleviate the need to correct these errors in a separate report after enactment of the new zoning bylaw, therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to include in the new zoning bylaw 2026-50 prior to third reading all zoning bylaw amendments to zoning bylaw 2008-250 approved by Council after July 6, 2022, the date of the commencement of the new zoning bylaw project, which were inadvertently omitted through consolidation errors in the new zoning bylaw 2026-50.
Did members have any questions on that one or prepared to carry it? I don't see any hands up. Is that carried? Carried. Thank you, colleagues. So we'll go back to, we have 2 items outstanding then. The first of which is the response to inquiry, I believe. Yes. So we'll go back to the issuance of N5, N12, N13, and AGIs at the Landlord Tenant Board in Ottawa. This had come to our previous meeting. We deferred it until this one because staff were not available to address it. I don't think that staff have any kind of a presentation to make, so I think we can move straight into our public delegations, the first of whom is Nelda Giroux. Nelda, and sorry, is Nelda online or in the room? And I'll just ask one more time whether Nelda Giroux is in the room or online. And if not, we will move on to our second registered speaker, who is Dave Longchamp. Good morning, Dave, and welcome to the Planning and Housing Committee.
Hello.
Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee, and there's a clock right next to you there.
Oh, am I on?
You
Yeah.
are, whenever you're
Okay.
ready, sir.
Hi, my
Thank
name is
you.
Dave, and I'm a member of Acorn. I'll first start off by saying that I wish Acorn never had to exist. In a perfect world, Acorn would not be needed. We are far from that world. I'm so grateful for the advocacy group. So my entire building was issued an N13 that never went to the landlord-tenant board. It was a blatant attempt to bully the tenants into leaving or paying market rent prices for their rent-controlled apartments. They can try to intimidate me, but that's fine. But when you start intimidating senior women and people on fixed income, I draw the line there. This particular senior woman wanted to be here, but she had mobility issues which prevented her from coming today. That's why I am here, to make my voice heard and to speak on her and my neighbor's behalf. The N13 was issued by the landlord to the 120 residents of my building, and this caused undue stress over a long period of time for all of the tenants. I want to reiterate that N13 never went to the landlord-tenant board. The paltry cash for keys that they offered wouldn't even cover the costs of moving and first and last month's rent at market value. They expected us to just pack up all of our belongings and move during a housing crisis so they could change some cupboards and install new floors. I had started to look for other apartments during this time, and the only place within my price range were rooms for rent. Going from a bachelor to a room for rent, just, it didn't sit well for me. Thankfully, Acorn came in, hosted actions, educated the residents of my building about our rights. As a result, many of the tenants held firm and we kept our homes. I believe it was never about the renovations, but a way to squeeze tenants who had rent-controlled units. Acorn shouldn't be relied upon to help every tenant in the city of Ottawa. I am grateful Acorn helped me, so I look to you, the city of Ottawa, to make a renoviction bylaw that is strong and will protect the people that live here. We can't have landlords that threaten tenants with N13s anytime they want more money. I would not wish the stress of having an N13 delivered to anyone. Please work closely with Acorn. They have experience with most tenants that have been issued N13s that have not been tracked with the landlord-tenant board, and they can give recommendations for strong bylaws that protect marginalized residents. I also urge the city to look towards Hamilton's bylaw as a guide on how we can make our city the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate the presentation. There's a question for you from Councillor Troster.
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for being here. So that's really interesting because if I look at the data that came back from staff from the landlord-tenant board, there was an 800% increase in N13s between 2010 and 2023, but that only represented 32. So what you're telling me is your building, there were 120 apartments and they were all
120
told
residents,
to leave.
yes.
Okay. So most people chose to leave and take the cash for keys offer. Why? Why do you think they didn't go back to the board or
I would say about 45% of the tenants left. Why they took the cash for keys, I don't know. They were offering $5,000, just the cost of moving, and then first and last month's rent, and you've got plus one extra month of rent, and that $5,000 is done.
Did you see those rental listings when they went back up after those renovations were done? Do you know what the price difference was?
Yeah, it was pretty much market rent, and a lot of the tenants there were under rent control. They were paying like half that rent.
Okay,
Yeah.
So the rent doubled. And then did you see any evidence in those new units? Because I'm sure you probably saw the listings online. Of what actual renovations were made?
So, yeah, it was mostly cosmetic. There was no like structural, or it was just like new floors, new cabinets, and coat of paint.
So you think these are things that a tenant could live through or move out for a couple of days, but not have to completely vacate.
So the funny thing is, yeah, they could have done all of the renovations while the tenants were living there. They actually came into my apartment. I got a new patio door and a new patio window. They were in there for like, I was watching them the whole time. They were in there for maybe an hour. And they came in, old one out, new one in. And I'm just like, okay, thanks guys, bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's really helpful for us to understand that while this data is an indication of a trend, it absolutely doesn't capture all of the cases where there is that turnover in an apartment due to a rather cosmetic renovation, and an N13 may or may not be issued, but it's under the guise of renovations that people are being asked to leave. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Mr. Longshore, there is another question for you from Councillor Luloff.
Hey, thanks so much for coming today and for speaking about this. My first question was, would you have lived among the construction had they given you that option? I think you've answered that, yes, right?
Would they have left?
Like, would you have lived amongst the construction? So had they said, like, look, we want to replace your floors, we want to do your cabinets.
I mean,
it's going to be disruptive for a few days,
Like, I mean, they've done like cockroach treatments, and they get you to just put everything to one side of the apartment. They come in, treat one side, and then you got to move everything back. I mean, it would have been a minor inconvenience,
Sure.
But to get a renovated unit at the same price, I mean, I'd absolutely undergo that.
Okay, great. And just like for edification, are you comfortable telling us who the landlord is?
So the problem is, the building was sold to a new landlord, and they did the renovations, and then the building was then sold to somebody else. So under the renovations, I don't know who the landlord was, but the current landlord is Sterling Karmer.
And they didn't issue the M13. It was the one before that, right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Longshore, thank you very much. Those are the questions for you. We'll move on to the next delegation, who is Debbie Staples. Good morning, Ms. Staples. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Good morning, Council. My name is Debbie Staples. I'm a member of Acorn. I'm nervous, obviously. My new landlord bought the building and gave us a letter stating that there wouldn't be no changes, absolutely none. And then about maybe a week and a bit later, most of us received N13s. Names were spelt wrong. Even some tenants didn't get any. So, yeah, I've lived where I am in Vanier in my building for 20 years. I've been there for 20 years. So I'm kind of grandfathered in, I guess you'd say. My rent is only $602. And that's the kind of people they're after. It's a bachelor. I have a fixed income. I'm on ODSP. To move to another place would be not recommended for me. It would break me. I can't afford regular rents with a fixed income. And the tactics that the landlords did were targeting us seniors that have lived there for a while on low rent, as you know. Cash for keys. And I live in a twin building. There's side by side. One took the cash for keys. The bachelor next to me, the gentleman moved out and they renovated in there. They're charging him $1,700. It's just like my apartment. They have stopped repairs. Inside, they have stopped repairs to a halt. It impacted me physically and emotionally. My life turned upside down. Headaches, sleepless nights. I never used to get headaches. And I'm grateful to Acorn because without them I couldn't do this. And now my life is an open book, but I'm glad because you got to know what's going on. If I would have to move, I'd have to ask the postman to deliver the mail to my car. I have nowhere to go. Yeah. Both buildings didn't go to the the LTB. Like I said, one neighbor took cash for keys, but the rest of us fought. We stayed. We're still living there because we went public. I was on the press, on the news, and I guess, you know, being the big corporate, I don't know. They backed down, which was fantastic, but nothing's guaranteed. My landlord was hoping that we would settle and, you know, stick our tail between our legs and leave. Sorry. That's why Acorn has been educating tenants for decades, but renovictions are still increasing. It shows us our current tenant rights don't protect us. That's why we need renoviction bylaw. This is not just about me and my neighbors. This is about every person in Ottawa that is unfortunate to deal with this. Even though we won this renoviction, in my buildings, I don't feel safe because my landlord could sell the building and, you know, I could be renovicted again with a new landlord. I will only feel safe when there's a renoviction bylaw in writing that shows me that I'm safe. I'm speaking from my heart. I ask you to listen with yours. Thank you.
Debbie, thank you very much. There are some questions for you from councillors. Councillor Luloff and then Councillor Troster will have questions for you.
Chair, if the councillor member that's a part of the committee wants to go first, I can cede the floor to her.
Thanks, Councillor Troster.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm so sorry you went through that experience. And so can you just tell me how many apartments are there in your building?
6 and 6 side by side.
Okay, and everyone received a notice at the same time when the building was sold?
There may be one or two people that didn't, and the people that did, the names were spelt wrong. And I went to one Nicholas where the paralegal told me that it wasn't any good.
Okay.
And then when I went to their office, Jason and Barra is my landlord. I went to their office and he told me that they weren't doing it anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fantastic. Why didn't you call me and tell me?
Okay. So you mentioned your neighbor's apartment was renovated and now the rent is $1,700 instead of the $600 that you're paying. Did you get a chance to see what the renovations were that were made?
Yeah, I seen it's cosmetic.
Okay. Right. So like what? Like
basic
paint
floors, a new sink in the bathroom.
Okay. So as a tenant, do you think if those renovations were made to your apartment that you would feel the need to move out, or do you think that's something you could live through?
I could live through.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're on ODSP. Thank you for sharing that. Can you remind me of what the housing allowance is under ODSP?
14.
Or that's the total that you get per month.
Oh, what was the question? I can't hear.
So you get $1,400 a month.
Yes.
And then is there a specific part that's designated for housing under ODSP of what you're supposed to be paying? Either way, $600 is already almost half your budget.
Yeah.
Per month. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a vehicle too, and insurance and bills.
Okay. So if an apartment was $1,700 a month, would be more than you're already receiving. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So staff will be bringing back a draft renoviction bylaw in the spring. And the idea is to create an interim step so that if a landlord does feel the need to evict before they issue an N13, that they would have to prove that the renovations require vacant possession of the unit.
Definitely have to prove that because what needs to be done in my apartment is just a cosmetic.
Okay, and so it's also, you were mentioning that any of you who chose to stay at the lower rent, that the landlord is refusing to do basic repairs?
I think so.
That's your impression. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate that. That seems very consistent. And again, you're saying none of the cases in your building ended up going to the landlord-tenant board.
No.
Some of you fought and stayed, and some people took
Yeah,
the cash for keys.
I went public. I was on the news. I was on the press, and I guess it helped us.
Okay.
Protesting in front of my building with Acorn. I'm grateful for Acorn.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And again, I think this gets to the nugget of the point that I've been trying to make, which is that the data shows us a trend, but it in no way captures the scope of the renovation problem we're seeing in our city. And your story as a senior woman who's paid your rent faithfully for 20 years,
Yep.
who's on a fixed income, your story is the typical profile that we're seeing in my office. So I think it's really important that you shared it. And I know it can be really hard to tear your heart open and tell your story, but I want to let you know that it does have an impact. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Councillor Lula.
You answered both my questions while you were. Oh, don't problem.
I'm sorry.
You answered both my questions in responding to Errol Troster, but I do want to let you know that this is your landlord's name is one that's come up in my office as well, in my ward as well. So this is not something that's isolated. So I really appreciate you raising that with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Love. Debbie, thank you very much. You did great. So our last delegation will be Rosalinda Klempen. Good morning, Ms. Klempen. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning.
Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to us.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of very strong rules for the rental renovation license bylaw. My name is Rosalinda, and I'm an Acorn member. I want to address the report of the Planning and Housing Committee to Councillor Troster and the submission of Tony Miller in the context of my own experience. Cutting to the chase, the needs of the bylaw are about tenant protection from landlord harassment and blatantly fraudulent threats to force tenants, especially long-term tenants, to vacate purely to garner ill-gain profit. I wish to provide evidence that renovation threats coming both with N11s, cash for keys, and N13s, renovictions are being employed as abusive bad faith leverage for profiteering. Data about these cases is missing. The consequent harm is tenant displacement, suffering, and loss of affordable housing. Having been under this siege for almost 2 years, I can attest to how it consumes your life, causing severe stress, mental anguish, and chronic exhaustion. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Miller's claim that RTA regulations discourage landlords from pursuing renovictions. My landlord, Ann Barra, purchased multiple properties and served all the inherited tenants within 11s, which, as Mr. Miller correctly states, do not constitute evictions, but voluntary agreements to vacate. The eviction threat was in the accompanying letter, boldly stating eviction was inevitable due to a need for renovations. You are all targeted for termination, and an N13 is coming. This helped me explain the despicable landlord harassment I've been experiencing. All tenants were fully aware that any renoviction would be in bad faith. 2 moved out within 11 agreements due to the N13 threat. I agree with Mr. Miller that tenants have access to resources about their rights, but the information given about the RT and LTB is discouraging. One example is the Service Action Housing, stating they do go to the LTB as representation, but don't normally do N13s as there's not a lot of success and they are very difficult to fight. And even if the landlord does not produce a building permit at the hearing, the eviction may be accepted. Contrary to the claim of Mr. Miller, landlords have every reason to be encouraged to pursue evictions. The tenants of my building who moved out after the N13 threat investigated their rights, and they knew that the future costs and risks of fighting the ruthless assault of the landlord would be absurdly damaging, and a chance of losing at a renoviction hearing leaves insufficient time to move. They did not risk the fundamental survival need for housing to the LTB. From my considerable LTB experience, the landlord could easily be favored, and the LTB provides no significant deterrent consequences to violating landlords and does not even enforce its own fines. Mr. Miller states only official LTB data must be used to count rent evictions. I disagree. Data is missing about tenants harassed out of their homes by rent eviction threat. The 2 vacated under threat apartments in my building were not subjected to major renovations. An inspector who checked on the need for an asbestos removal N13 claim of the landlord not only found no asbestos after testing, but stated it wouldn't matter since all work done was cosmetic, or as he put it, and I quote, to freshen it up. The remaining tenants in all properties owned by the same landlord were eventually served identical N13 notices with a list of unnecessary renovation work. These and many other harassing N13s need to be tracked and are not accounted for in the LTB data because the landlord did not file them. Mr. Miller reports that about 50% of landlord L2 eviction applications at LTB for rent evictions resulted in eviction. So were 50% found to be in bad faith and were more actually in bad faith but granted? Regardless, all tenants would have suffered greatly from the L2 proceedings. Mr. Miller reports about 50% of L2 applications were withdrawn by the landlords before scheduled hearings. I would submit that a combination of successful wrongful possession of the units from the N13 threat notice alone and totally indefensible N13s could explain the withdrawals, and regardless, all tenants would have suffered. The statement of Mr. Miller that most landlords defer repair and renovations until tenants move out naturally could more accurately be amended to naturally or because they were bad faith threatened out. Recent ridiculous increases in the market cost of rent encourage unscrupulous landlords to use bad faith N12s, N13s, and N13 threats to scare tenants out. This trend may explain the huge percentage increases in these notices in the report of the Planning and Housing Committee. We need a strong bylaw such as Toronto has, not only to prevent fraudulent landlord rent evictions, but attempted fraud threat rent evictions, because both are serious offenses with horrendous consequences. We need stringent requirements to serve and track all N13s to stop landlords' campaigns of predatory profit seeking. The question is, does the capital city of Canada have the conviction to close the RTA loopholes to stop criminal landlord behavior? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Klempen. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much. Just for anyone who's watching, the delegate was referring to some correspondence that councillors received, and that a particular real estate investor has put out publicly questioning the veracity of this data. So I want to thank you for coming here. So just to summarize, you're talking about the issuance of an N13 or the threat of an N13 being used as a threat for tenants and then potentially withdrawn when people feel intimidated to move out. Correct?
What do you mean by potentially withdrawn? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so not, a landlord, for example, could
Oh,
issue eviction notices to an entire building, but if a lot of people move out, that's not going to proceed through the court system. But functionally, the eviction has happened.
This is the missing data. How many N13s are being thrown like mud at the wall to see what sticks?
Yeah.
Also, N11s are not eviction threats in and of themselves, but mine came with an eviction threat.
Okay.
And the tenants who moved out not on the N13, which came later, but on the basis of the eviction threat letter that accompanied the N11.
Right.
Yeah. So threats are threats, right? None of these threats are being accounted for. I think we have an extremely serious problem on our hands, and that we have to deal with it.
So your own building received notices. How many apartments are in the building?
There's 7 total units in the building,
Okay.
But there were only 6 in my building that were actually occupied.
Okay. And were any of them returned to market after folks left? Like,
Oh,
did you
yes.
see the rent differential?
Oh, yes.
So what was the difference between before and after?
Oh, it was quite a bit. I don't know exactly, but
Okay.
I can't remember. But Canberra is the landlord, and they did this in every property they purchased. I believe that they purchased a number of properties at the same time, not on the basis of being satisfied with the profit from the units that were rent controlled, but on the basis of we can evict everybody and make a lot more money.
Right. And I mean, as we've discussed at this committee many times, a solution to this would be vacancy control, proper vacancy control, so that there was some provincial control on how much a rent could be raised between tenants. But because no such thing exists, there's a financial incentive to evict.
That would be excellent, yes. Vacancy control. And the other issue is, I think, as Ms. Staples talked about, they can serve another N13 at any moment. So the tenants in our building are under a state of chronic fear. Right. Without the anti-rent eviction bylaw, we are left in a state of, are they going to start up again? Now, they have no basis for the N13. It's scare tactics. It's threats.
Right. So do you believe if there was some regulation, like a bylaw from the city, that forced a landlord to prove that they required vacant possession before issuing that N13, do you think that would be helpful?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, they should have evidence that the work is necessary, right? That it requires vacancy, and that there should be a building permit that has to be produced. If that was the case, I don't think my landlord would have gone forward with all this eviction harassment.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here, and I think you help underscore the point I've been trying to tease out, which is that the data that staff received from the LTV is an indication of a trend, but it certainly does not capture the scope of the problem in our city. It tells us a piece of the story.
Yeah, because those are the ones that are filed.
Right.
But there are, for everyone filed, how many are unfiled?
Right.
And tenants are afraid. And we should not have to live on this under this constant fear in order that landlords can circumvent rent control, which is all it is, really. There are very few actual valid rent evictions. I just like to say that that's my opinion. Extremely few. It would be extremely rare that a tenant would have to vacate. We had a prospective buyer for the building who came through and said, I've done major renovations, right, on buildings. And he was just talking about it because it's a heritage property. And, you know, it's always nice to preserve heritage. He was interested in that. And he said, I replaced all the wiring and all the walls, but he did not ask any tenants to move out. And actually, tenants stayed during that process. Okay. So, I mean, he was not interested in rent eviction. He was interested in doing the work. I mean, my God, if the building is falling down, you really have to ask, you know, if you need structural repairs. The question is, how did it get to that point? Why wasn't it caught earlier? If the place is so bad, and this is because landlords don't do repairs, why bother? You just, you know, get rid of the tenant, do some stuff, and later, you know, don't worry about it. We'll deal with it when we can get more rent.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your perspective. It's really helpful. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Ariel Truster. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Klempen. That is the last delegation on this item. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Luloff, question.
Thank you, Chair. So of the 4 delegations that we've heard today, and I realize that that is just a snippet of the stories that are out there, especially, you know, given your work with Acorn, I'm sure that you've heard far more stories. Of the 4 that we heard today, 3 are tied to a particular landlord. How widespread do you think this issue is? Is there a majority of landlords doing what they're supposed to be doing, and there are a few really bad actors? What's your impression from the conversations that you've been having? Because hearing Mr. Ambara's name 3 times today and a couple of times in my office over the course of the last 6 months or so leads me to believe that there are a few very bad actors, but that most landlords seem to be following the rules and not intimidating their tenants.
Yeah, I understand the point you're trying to make. Actually, I'm quite offended by the term bad actors because it implies that, in fact, there are only a few of these landlords doing this. I think it's clear from the data that was in that report, right, of the Planning and Housing Committee, that the percentage increases are drastic. And we need a lot more explanation about why these drastic increases occur. These are actual filings. that are showing the percentage increases. They don't even account for all the eviction notices that are simply served and then not filed. Okay, so no, I don't think it's just in Barra. I think there's a lot of this going on. A lot of people are terrified that this is what's going to happen to them, that their landlord is going to go, oh my God, you've been under rent control for a while, right? Let's just serve it in 13. Now, there are good landlords who would not do that, no doubt. I'm not saying they're all doing it, but I don't think this is a problem restricted to a few bad actors. A lot of landlords, my previous landlord was constantly violating LTB regulations. And so why not? Because nothing ever happens at LTB. There's no deterrence, there's no consequences. It's a little slap on the wrist and stop doing that. Repeatedly, stop harassing, stop harassing. I mean, you try telling them harassment is the primary management method for this building. It doesn't matter. Nothing gets done, nothing gets accomplished. My previous landlord didn't mind going to LTB every week because nothing ever happened. This is the problem. We can't count on RTA. We can't count on LTV. They don't function well, right? They're not up to scratch, and they're not protecting tenants. Now, in some cases, they're not protecting landlords as well. I understand that. There are failings on both sides.
I didn't mean to offend you. I don't want to call them good actors.
No, I'm not saying you offended me personally. I'm saying that term, which has been used before, implies that, somehow it's just a few landlords that are committing all of this. But I think there's much more of this going on, and I think you can see it in the data. Why were 50% of L2 applications withdrawn before a hearing? They were bogus. They got the tenants out.
Intimidation tactic, I understand.
Right, and none of my landlord's applications were in those, whatever it's 157. So, you know what I mean? We got to separate out the problem with the actual filings and then the additional unknown problem, right, of all the serving just to scare tenants out of their units. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right,
No,
thank
thanks.
you.
I just wish that we had a bigger sample to deal with today, because when you hear 75% of the people coming out to talk today speaking about one landlord, it does cause pause.
Yeah, I imagine it would. The data is really missing here. If you look over the report from the Planning and Housing Committee, it's not answering fundamental questions, right? Like, who are these people? For example, your question, how many are by the same landlord, right? Why these percentage increases have occurred. I mean, I believe it's because access to more profit.
Well, thank you to you and everybody else who came out to speak today. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and thank you very much to Ms. Klempen for that delegation. That was great. There are no further delegations. There's no action to be taken with this, but thank you very much to Councillor Troster for asking that it be held. Oh, do you want to ask questions to staff? Absolutely.
Hi, thank you so much to staff for responding to my inquiry and then responding again when the data was updated. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions drawing from some of the delegations here. We know that while the official pathway to file an N13 involves specific steps, we also know that tenants can feel pressured or intimidated to leave without ever receiving a formal eviction notice, as you heard today. When staff are working with tenants seeking emergency support, is there any data collected about tenants receiving informal notices of eviction or cash for keys? Do we have any way of quantifying how many people are being evicted into homelessness or being evicted or threat of eviction is requiring city support?
Thank you, Chair. The city does not directly, so we provide very limited funding for eviction loss prevention. Most of our referrals go to the Ottawa Community Legal Clinics. They would be probably best positioned to do that. We don't have direct oversight over those clinics, but we would be happy to reach up and follow up with you outside of this, Councillor.
Okay, I appreciate that. So again, we know what we're hearing anecdotally, and we know the pressure that's currently on our system, but we have no way of quantifying if a rent eviction directly led into homelessness, although we did hear from Peter Tilley at committee twice over the last 2 years about what he's seeing at the mission. But again, he didn't have numbers. So I know it's challenging.
Thank you, Chair. No, we don't have direct comprehensive numbers. As you've kind of said, we have a lot of anecdotal pieces of data. One of the things that will be coming forward to Council is the update on the renovictions bylaw, which we've done more in-depth data analysis. So we will have some more to share through that process, but that's not ready at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yeah, the only thing I'll say is, I think as we heard from delegates today, the raw numbers don't always tell the whole story. And what motivated me to bring this item forward originally was the casework we're seeing in my office daily, weekly. So I just want to thank everyone who came here today. I want to thank staff for working on this. It can be tough when there's the data may show us a trend, but it doesn't tell us everything. But we know that there's increased pressure on our system, and that if someone is evicted into homelessness, the city is paying to house them. Do we have a sense of how much? One more question. Do we have a sense of how much it costs per year to support someone living in shelter?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. It's around $3,000 a month, roughly, to just support somebody in shelter in Ottawa. Of course, that does fluctuate based on capacity and demand, because as you can imagine, there's some fixed, some variable cost, but it is quite expensive. The other thing I will mention is we do report through the point in time counts, as well as our annual housing data, which is reason for service of accessing a homeless shelter, which does have eviction as one of the reasons. One of the challenges, just for your awareness, is we would not rely on that data in terms of a comprehensive approach to where these legal evictions, it doesn't provide much detail. The program is owned by the federal government, so you're only allowed to select one reason for service. So if you were evicted because you were fleeing domestic violence, somebody may tick the box domestic violence, and we can't see the comprehensive reasons why they would be evicted, but it is something we're working to update.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think even that number is really helpful to know that some of these folks might be paying their own money for $600 a month to be housed. And if they are evicted into homelessness, it costs the city $3,000 a month to keep them housed if they're in shelter. So I would just invite us all to reflect on that. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who came to committee today, and thank you to committee members for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster, and thank you for asking that we bring this back. That was a good discussion. So we will move on to our last substantive item of the morning. Sorry, I did just want to quickly mention, I've been informed by the coordinator that the motion that was brought by Vice Chair Gower with respect to corrections to the official plan zoning bylaw did not have the usual language at the end, be it further resolved that pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice be given. So that has since been added to that motion that we passed. And I'm just trying to find it, 1670 10th Line Road. So there are 4 delegations to this one. In addition to the applicant, I'm going to ask staff to give us a presentation on the item, and then we'll move into delegations. Whenever you're ready, Lisa. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Lucy Ramirez, and I'm a planner and the file lead for the zoning bylaw amendment at 1670 10th Line Road. Next slide, please. The subject property, known municipally as 1670 10th Line Road, is a large 1,856 square meters, regularly shaped lot located on the west side of 10th Line Road in the Queenswood Heights neighborhood in Orleans. The land highlighted in photo 2 and 3 is the subject of the proposal. There is an existing dwelling on site, low-rise residential development north, west, and south of the property. There are commercial uses to the east, such as Fallingbrook Shopping Centre, Charlemagne Plaza, and Orleans Centre. Next slide, please. The subject property is a through lot, which means it's bounded on opposite sides by streets. The property has frontage along 10th Line Road, an arterial road, as well as Duvernay Drive, a local road. Next slide, please. Per the official plan, the property is in the suburban transect and designated minor corridor, and the corridor designation applies to bands of land along specified streets whose planned function combines a higher density of development, a greater degree of mixed uses, and a higher level of street transit service. Next slide, please. The existing dwelling will be demolished and a low-rise apartment building with a total of 30 units is proposed. A mix of unit types are planned: studios, one bedroom plus den, and 2-bedroom units. There's a breakdown there in the chart on the slides. Next slide, please. Surface parking is proposed in the yard abutting Duvernay Drive with a total of 23 parking spaces, 17 spaces for residents and 6 for visitors. 22 bicycle parking spaces are proposed inside the building. Next slide, please. The building has a strong street edge along the corridor, which is 10th Line Road, per our policies. There is a bicycle storage room and a garbage recycling room within the building. Amenity space is provided via balconies that face the streets, as well as below-grade terraces, as well as in the rear yard. Parking is in the rear yard, and walkways are provided for pedestrian circulation. Next slide, please. So windows are connecting the building to the street, and the balconies as well are along the facades that face the street, and they enhance and create a connection with the public street. Next slide, please. So there are various official plan policies that support this proposal. The official plan notes intensification will support 15-minute neighborhoods by being directed by hubs and corridors where most services and amenities are located. The official plan also supports the protection of the right-of-way, and this proposal is doing that, protecting space in the right-of-way along 10th Line Road for future changes to the transportation corridor. It supports a range of dwelling unit sizes in multi-unit dwellings and the 4-story building height along the 10th Line Road corridor. So development is to address the corridor, and vehicular access shall generally be provided by the parallel or side street, in this case Duvernay Drive. That's also a policy within our official plan. Next slide, please. The site is well connected to a mix of land uses where daily and weekly needs can be accessed within a 15-minute walk. This slide shows a 900-meter radius of a circle, and along the pedestrian network, that's about 1,200 meters. So there are many services and amenities nearby. Staff have highlighted a few on the slides. The 15-minute neighborhood study was done in 2001, and 8 of the 9 services and amenities that were investigated are within a 15-minute walk of this site, and the site is shown by the little flag there on the image. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is that Planning and Housing Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to the zoning bylaw for 1670 10th Line Road to rezone from residential first density subzone HH to, with an urban exception, 1178, to general mixed use zone with an urban exception and a height suffix of 13.5 meters to permit a low-rise apartment building. Thank you.
Ramirez, thank you very much. Clear presentation. There are 4 public delegations, so we'll hear first from Deborah Baldwin, who will be followed by Linda Denis. Stephanie Coco will follow her, and then Catherine Forsyth. So Deborah Baldwin, I don't know if she's in the room or online. Hi, Deborah. Good morning and welcome to the committee. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation.
Thank you. A key principle of intensification is the development of larger buildings that do not disrupt, but instead complement the character of the surrounding established community. I took this quote from the City of Ottawa Planning website. I circulated a petition among residents on Duvernay Drive, reaching 87% of the households, which equated to 72 individuals, including our closest neighbors on 10th Line, Every household contacted supported the request for the building frontage to be located on Duvernay Drive. The reasoning for this was clear. A parking lot does not complement the character of the surrounding community. Everyone unanimously wants a fence if the parking lot is to be placed on Duvernay Drive. Foliage will not adequately conceal a parking lot. Hedges take years to grow and struggle under large trees, and deciduous trees and bushes are not effective for 6 months of the year. A well-constructed privacy fence would largely conceal the parking lot and better complement the community's character. If a bylaw amendment is necessary to install a fence with a reduced boundary as suggested, I ask that this be done. If accommodating a fence is not possible with the proposed reduction in boundary space, I respectfully request that the original boundary space be maintained and a fence installed. Complete streets are designed to accommodate the needs of all users, including both vehicles and pedestrians. Again, the quote was taken from City of Ottawa Planning website. The second part of my petition asks that vehicular access be maintained on 10th line. With the addition of 30 new households, it is important to consider not only those households that may or may not own vehicles, but also the needs of service vehicles, taxis, ride-sharing services, delivery companies, and visitors. In fact, households without vehicles may rely even more so on the delivery services. Only 6 visitor parking spaces are planned for 30 households, meaning the overflow parking will be along the back of the building near the proposed vehicular entrance. Duvernay Drive is a narrow street with no sidewalks. Relying on residents to monitor cars parked too long, calling 311, does not address the dangers from legally parked cars, increased traffic, an entrance in that area, narrow roads, and pedestrians on the street. So it's not 311 we'll be calling, it's 911. So I am hoping that the safety of the pedestrians is a concern of yours, our elected officials. I've already shared everyone a photo showing legally parked cars creating very limited space for traffic and pedestrians near the proposed apartment entrance. So this problem isn't seasonal. The snow didn't noticeably narrow the road, and I can provide measurements and the picture if asked. Residents support maintaining vehicular access on 10th line to limit the extra traffic. I met with the developers, Christian Lacroix, and a member of his staff, Connor Gallagher. They also expressed their concern with the safety of pedestrians on that piece of property. They suggested to me restricting parking to one side of the portion of Duvernay on that to allow for increased space for pedestrian and increased safety. I think that's a great idea. It reduces the dangers to pedestrians from parking overflow. As elected officials responsible for planning, I respectfully request your support for the proposed pedestrian safety measures. Maintain vehicle access to the site via 10th line to help alleviate traffic congestion and the in out to the apartment building. Restrict parking to one side of Duvernay along the rear development, thereby creating additional space for pedestrians. These recommendations are intended to address the risk associated with increased traffic, overflow parking on narrow roads shared with pedestrians. Adopting this approach would resolve the safety concerns protecting pedestrians without requiring sidewalk installation. You have both the authority and the duty to ensure the safety of all residents, and I urge you to give this matter careful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baldwin. There was a question for you from Councillor Luloff.
Thanks so much for coming out today, Deborah. Do you generally support this development?
Actually, I do support the development. I recognize that there's a short of this housing, and listening to the delegation before me, I'm just, awestruck about the challenges that we're facing with rentals. I am glad to finally have this area developed. I think it'll finish the community. I met with the developer, Christian Lacroix, and a member of his staff, Connor Gallagher, and I was very impressed with them. I feel that they're trying to provide quality housing. I went and viewed one of their other developments, and it was an attractive, well-maintained building, so I think we're doing really well there. Obviously, installation of a fence rather than a hedge is very important to the residents, and particularly to me. A fence is the only solution that would mitigate the light pollution from all the vehicle headlights, which are otherwise going to shine directly into my living room, dining room, bedroom windows, because I'm right there. So this was a point sort of missed under the theme of the light pollution. In fact, it was Chris and Connor, when we were discussing a hedge, brought up the point that hedges take many years to grow and don't grow well under large trees. So I strongly hope that we can find a way to install a privacy fence. It doesn't seem to me to be that big of an ask, so I'm hoping that can happen. My second issue, centered on pedestrian safety, I don't believe is the responsibility of the developers, but rather the responsibility of our elected officials here today.
Thank you very much for that. And I think that those discussions are ongoing with the developer. They seemed quite open to the idea of a privacy fence and to moving where the access was on Duvernay, so that people aren't just shining their headlights directly into
my house. Thank you.
your house. You mentioned measurements. Oh, just before I get to that question, this isn't the right committee to look at parking on Duvernay. That would be transportation committee under Chair Tierney. So we can take a look at that as this proceeds. So it's not something that we can remedy here today. But we can discuss that afterwards. You mentioned that you took measurements. Can you expand on what you meant by that?
Absolutely. So, as I said, I raised concerns regarding the width of Duvernay, the parked cars, and sort of the increased traffic and the entrance being in the midst of this, and with regards totally to pedestrian safety. So I got out my tape measure, and I'll give you an example from last Wednesday. So the width of Duvernay Drive along the back where the entrance is going to be is 330 inches, and sorry for the younger people who are metric. For reference, a large SUV, 89.3 inches, and a garbage truck is 101. Wednesday was garbage day. We had 2 SUVs on one side, 1 SUV on the other side. So those were 89. For my calculations, I gave them 6 inches clearance on both sides. So that leaves a total of 212 inches occupied by vehicles and clearance, 128 inches of room left for both traffic and pedestrians through the corridor. Garbage truck at 101 inches left 27 inches, which has to be divided both sides. So it really is an issue for pedestrians trying to walk there. And in the midst of this is where you're going to have the entrance. The situation is even more constricted, definitely during winter months because of snowbanks. But however, fewer vehicles tend to park on Duvernay in the winter because we all take advantage of the frozen front lawns and double up our cars there. Many of the homeowners can't expand their single lane driveways to double because we have beautiful maple trees that are 45 years old in the front lawns. So that's another complication. So, you know, cars and people generally don't mix well, which is why they have sidewalks. We don't have those, and pedestrian safety is a significant concern along that portion. Children on Duvernay Drive must walk to Des Epinette to catch the school buses because they will no longer come down Duvernay Drive because we have congestion points. These children are small and often, you know, below the height of parked cars, so it's a worry. We do have other vulnerable groups: disabled people, elderly people like myself, dog walkers, teenagers dressed in black with earbuds. So we need to consider pedestrian safety. I'm not saying that Duvernay cannot handle additional vehicles. It can. I'm not saying it can't handle additional parked cars. It can. I am saying that this configuration of parked cars, an entranceway, and pedestrian safety needs to be considered. The length of time a vehicle is parked on the road doesn't alter this dangerous situation. The hazards, if not addressed, I feel will be 911 calls, not 311, for an overly lengthened car park. Again, you have the authority and duty to ensure the safety of all residents, and I urge you to give this matter proper consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think that we can have an offline discussion as to the parking configuration on Duvernay once this development gets underway. This is something that we can muckle onto together and work to remedy for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
There are a lot of site plan issues involved in what you're raising today, so there's presumably more process to come.
Would that parking also discuss sidewalks if required for pedestrians?
No.
So where would pedestrian safety be?
Yeah, so that's a discussion to have with your councillor, who can have that discussion with the transportation department.
Okay.
Yeah, it's but the zoning today would not hinge on that.
All right.
So I will, unless there are any further questions, Councillor Lulov? No. In that case, I'm going to move on to Linda Denny. Good morning, Ms. Denny, and welcome. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to raise concerns regarding the zoning bylaw amendment on 1670 10th Line Road. My name is Linda Denny, and I, along with my husband, have been living on Duvernay Drive for the past 30 years. Currently, our street is home to 56 single-family homes. It functions in a loop. Our street has one point of entry and exit. It goes, picture a number 9. It goes in, big loop, back to the entranceway and out. That's the only in and out on that street. So you've got not only cars, you've got construction workers, you've got delivery vehicles, all kinds of other transportation in and out one point, which is also the corner where the children are now forced to take school buses because the school buses have refused to drive down our street because of the narrowness around the loop and down our street. Our street also experiences overflow parking from nearby neighborhoods, which has created safety concerns due to reduced visibility and narrow driving lanes. The proposed amendment indicates that there will be only 23 parking spaces for the 30 units being proposed. This creates a structural mismatch. Even conservatively, estimating 30 units may have 30 to 45 vehicles, maybe. I recognize that not all units are going to have, tenants are going to have cars, but I'm just saying there's a possibility. But with only 23 spaces provided to the tenants, that is a shortfall from anywhere between 7 to 20 vehicles. Those vehicles will park on our street. It's just going to be a natural progression. When the curb space fills due to the parking overflow, sight lines are reduced dramatically and pedestrians, including children, become less visible, thus placing them at greater risk for an accident. There is also concern that if congestion worsens, the city's response may be to prohibit parking on one side of the street. Respectfully, that would penalize existing home residents for a problem created by insufficient on-site parking. Removing parking on one side does not create space. It shifts the burden. It reduces residents' parking supply, pushes vehicles further along the loop. Overflow should not be solved by taking away any parking from homeowners who purchase their properties under existing conditions. The root issue is parking supply and site access. It's not our street. Our street is not the problem. What happens when a fire truck needs access and/or paramedics are responding to a cardiac emergency and can't access the street? Do we accept delayed emergency response because the road has been overburdened? Fire protection planning cannot focus solely on hydrant proximity to the new building. It must consider full street accessibility under peak and obstructed conditions. When emergency access depends on obstructed width, that is a responsibility. This amendment proposal, as presented, places that responsibility at risk. This is not an inconvenience issue. It is a safety and liability issue. When we previously raised concerns about increased traffic and safety, particularly for the children and pedestrians walking on our streets, we were advised to contact 311 and that traffic calming is not considered in the assessment of a site-specific zoning bylaw. Respectfully, that response is concerning. If traffic impacts are not evaluated at the time zoning decisions are made, then we are effectively being told to wait until a safety problem occurs and then a request for retrofit. Planning should be preventive, not reactive. Approving additional density without evaluating how it affects a constrained single access loop street shifts the burden onto existing residents. During construction, we will experience heavy trucks, equipment staging, workers, parking, material deliveries, in addition to all the other deliveries and vehicle moving along our street. This compounds an already constrained environment. More importantly, school buses already refuse to drive down our street because it is too narrow, particularly around the curves. If a school bus cannot safely navigate our road today, how can we reasonably expect the parking overflow, delivery vehicles, ride shares, construction trucks, and overflow parking to safely coexist? This is not an inconvenience issue. It is a safety and liability issue. This is not.
Can you wrap up in the next 15 seconds?
Oh my goodness. It is our current reality. I'll skip to the last. I respectfully ask Council to reassess emergency access under obstructed conditions, reconsider arterial access, justify study and evaluation of reduced unit count if necessary. In closing, Council has the authority to approve growth, but it also has to do the duty to ensure that growth does not compromise safety. My personal feeling, I would suggest that the parking, as first submitted by the developer, have access to 10th line as well as our streets, so you don't have a continuous all parking is on all.
Thank you, Ms. Denis.
Sorry.
I know your Councillor Lulop has some questions for you.
Is there an important point that you really wanted to make that you didn't get a chance to get through in your discourse?
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to look at it quickly. Yes, okay. We're talking about the right in and right out access only from arterial road. So this is what we're proposing. No vehicle access from a residential street to the apartment building, and installation of a privacy fence as my neighbor had previously requested. Dual access is also an option. It was previously submitted in the original plan by the developer, and that was refused by city staff or city planners. I don't know who refused it, but it got refused. And that is an alternative option, in my view, as well as having the parking. If we have the apartment up front and have the parking all on 10th line, one might argue, the city may argue that, well, you're having all the traffic in and out 10th line. Well, there are many homes already on 10th line that only have in and out access on the right hand or on the left hand. And delivery trucks goes to their homes as well. So it's not an inconvenience. It does exist. It's close to a city light, but far enough away that it allows a flow of traffic. It will not impede the traffic.
Yeah, my long-standing stipulation for development on 10th line was right in, right out access. I do understand, staff's concern with having a throughway there because people will skip the light and take Duvernay, which may cause even a larger problem when trying to access. Fair play. I appreciate you coming out today and your continued collaboration as we work through some of these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't have enough time to get to all points.
That's okay.
Thank you for your comments today. Our third delegation is Stephanie, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, Kaka, who I believe is online.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hi, welcome. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Appreciate it very much. I will not need 5 minutes, so hopefully that will save some time for all of you. I am a Duvernay Drive property owner as well, and I apologize that I cannot attend in person just due to my work commitments. However, I really strongly appreciate the availability and possibility to join virtually. The comments that I have to share are really to echo a lot of what Deborah and Linda have shared. I have not lived on the street as long as either one of them have. However, to be here for 3 years, to take a lot of pride and ownership of Duvernay Drive is quite strong with all of our dwellings and with individuals, whether they rent or own. I think that comments related to light pollution are important to acknowledge. Just how can we make smart decisions with the development layout, whether that be about the structure of the building itself or the safety of the parking lot and how that ends up being decided for the property. I do want to really emphasize that I support the idea and the concept of this project, where I think that it enables growth and opportunity for housing or in Orleans, in our overall Queenswood community. And it also supports the idea of using better structure of the property that is, quite frankly, only used to 1/4 of its amount right now. It would really help to establish, in a way, actual better safety of that property. It was already mentioned by one of the councillors, the in and out traffic that could occur, and could that create disruption with driving? We actually see a lot of that with just individuals that are pedestrians, where they are technically trespassing right now, but you do see within the neighborhood individuals inappropriately using that overall property. And so what I wanted to really emphasize is back to Deborah's comment, just the idea of having a proper privacy fence and the decisions that can be made to enable just overall safety of usage of the area and what can help just to delineate what is the private property versus otherwise. Again, just really want to emphasize that I'm pro for the overall project, but acknowledging, not wanting to echo just the idea of the light pollution. Certainly many comments that have been shared between Deborah and Linda about how can we enable best usage, but also best accessibility, if not for pedestrians, the younger and the older age individuals, and really looking at the use of the parking and not having any interruptions to what this is as a quieter crescent overall. When you participate in some of these municipal changes, I know that sometimes having a voice can at least just demonstrate, if not an overall end impact, just supporting the fact that we are really interested in this initiative. Many individuals of this neighborhood are very, if not concerned, just wanting to be engaged. And so it was important for me to be able to make the time to be here as well, just to share that we all see this as a growth part of our community, but hoping that it can be as cohesive and collaborative as possible. So I won't carry on, but I really just appreciate the opportunity to speak and having the availability to be here and support my neighbors that are there in person. So thank you.
Ms. Kaka, thank you very much. I don't see any hands up to ask you any questions, so thank you very much for the presentation today.
Thank you.
Which will bring us to our last delegation, who is Catherine Forsyth. No rush.
King for decades.
I hope this is a good experience for you. Whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate having an opportunity, to talk to some of the councillors here. I'm afraid my colleagues have better explained the same concerns I have for our street. My husband and I are not NIMBYs. I don't think anybody on our street are people that don't want anything built in our backyard, so to speak. We want more housing. We understand the crisis that is happening all over our country, including Ottawa. So that's not a problem for us. The problem is our people, especially our children, now, due to this bylaw amendment, if passed, the city is placing them in danger. I don't think that's part of good planning. As was said, some of them can't see over cars. I can just picture, we have most of our children walk to the schools. We are fortunate to have both elementary and high schools within walking distance, and that's important to us. Also, I just envision little children, kindergartners, grade oneers, now having to weave between a plethora of cars. I envision the whole street, every house will have a parked car in front of it that relates to residents in that apartment building. Where are my visitors going to park? Where are my family members going to park? For at least for Christmas, Easter, everything like that. There will be not enough room for the residents on the street. This plan is going to put 30 more residences, I don't know how many more people, on our street as far as their vehicles go. That might be a solution for the city, but to me it just is going to create danger. I just see those little kids late for school or just excited to be with their friends, weaving in and out of parked cars. Some of them might be just getting ready to take off. Some of them are just idling and being severely injured. That might sound like an extreme, but is it going to take the death of a child for somebody to realize that this bylaw will permit the increase in possibility of our children being hit? I don't think people realize. I wish the decision makers would walk around our street and understand the narrowness of it, understand what winter is like with snowbanks. In the summer, we have lots of visitors on our street. We have lots of service vehicles on our street. I thought of fire trucks, snow plows, snow removal vehicles eventually, police vehicles, waste management vehicles, interweaving, having to negotiate this as has been discussed. Now there will be 86 residences that will want to use our street for their visitors, the homeowners and the apartment dwellers, and for their family. It's going to be an impossibility, and this is what's going to cause injury. Yes, there are 23 parking spots for this building. There are only 17 parking spots for the residents. The other 6 parking lots spaces are for visitors. So that's very limiting. There will be residents who park on our street day and night. Taxis, Uber vehicles that serve us and that serve an additional 30 households, moving vans, delivery trucks such as UPS, FedEx, Purolator. We're in an online shopping era. There are lots of them on our street as it is. Food delivery vehicles, my pizza people, service vehicles, cable, phone, hydro, heating, cooling, all on this little narrow street that has one entrance and exit. We are not a throughway. We are not a corridor. We are not a highway. This street was not made to cope with that much traffic, and it's going to cause damage to people that live in the apartment as well as Duvernay Drive residents.
Ms. Forsyth, that's time.
Sorry, pardon me?
That's the time you're allotted. Thank you very much.
That's it? Oh,
but
my
I think
God.
Councillor Lulov may have some questions for you.
Yeah, it's the cheeky question that chairs usually don't really like, but is there one more point that you wanted to make that you didn't have a chance to get out?
It's not just cars parking. I mean, there's going to be cars idling, going to the apartment. These delivery vehicles I want no parking signs liberally and no stopping signs liberally used on our street. A sidewalk, why it might be our only alternative, means that, lost my train of thought, but it just, this is not Carling Avenue. This is not Bank Street. We don't have the room to safely do that. And I think planning and development should have to take that into their decision making. It's a traffic issue, fine, then the traffic people should have been invited as well. But whatever it is, you're endangering us. And that'll be put on the backs of councillors now, because it didn't seem to be consideration with planning and property development. Thank you for giving me the extra time, Matt. I appreciate it. I'm a little excited because this plan is so disturbing.
I think that thanks belongs to the chair for indulging me there. I have no further questions. I do have some comments to make at the end, and that's it, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Ms. English, I'm sorry, I don't see any further questions for you. Thank you very much for the present. Forsyth. Sorry, Ms. Forsyth. Thank you very much for the presentation
Thank you for letting me off the hook now.
Questions of staff?
I'll just make some brief comments. Thanks, Chair. Before I begin, I want to thank staff for the thorough review and analysis of this application. The applicant and their team as well for their collaboration throughout the process. It's quite rare to see so much engagement from an applicant on an issue like this, and taking my neighbors to visit some of their other sites to help, I think was an extra step that many don't actually take. So I think they should be recognized for that. I also want to recognize the many residents who took time to participate, share their perspectives with Deborah, and provide thoughtful feedback. This proposal matters because Orleans needs more housing options. I think everybody here recognizes that, especially housing that fits between detached homes and larger apartment buildings. This development introduces a mix of unit types and represents a form of missing middle housing that can support seniors looking to downsize and stay close to the community that they know, as well as families and individuals looking for more attainable rental options. That city building objective is real, and it's important. At the same time, this is an established neighborhood, and change must be handled thoughtfully and responsibly. I want to sincerely thank the residents of Duvernay and the surrounding area who engaged meaningfully in this process. Many came forward with constructive suggestions aimed at improving the application, not simply opposing it. That kind of participation strengthens our planning process and deserves to be reflected in how we move forward. Residents raised concerns around traffic, parking, pedestrian safety, privacy, landscaping, and overall compatibility. Those concerns deserve respect and careful consideration. For me, the key issue is balance, delivering much needed housing in Orleans while protecting the safety, privacy, and day-to-day livability of the existing residents on Duvernay Drive. In particular, concerns about vehicular access and the potential impact on pedestrian safety must be taken seriously, especially given that children walk in the area to reach school, bus pickup points. And if access remains on Duvernay, I expect that traffic impacts will be thoroughly reviewed and that the appropriate mitigation measures will be explored and clearly communicated. I also want to highlight a practical compromise raised by residents, exploring the right in, right out access on 10th Line Road rather than vehicular access on Duvernay Drive, combined with stronger buffering along Duvernay, including privacy fences or cedar hedging, but with the preference obviously being privacy fencing. I'm supportive of the concept and principle because it could reduce neighborhood impacts while still advancing broader housing objectives. Now I understand the new official plan does not prefer parking access or new driveways onto an arterial road like 10th Line. I respect that direction, but at the same time, we need to look honestly at existing conditions along the road here, including the constrained nature of Duvernay, existing pinch points, and how streets function day to day, particularly during peak periods. I recognize that there may be trade-offs, including the possibility that an alternative access arrangement could affect achievable unit count. If that's the case, I'd like to see those trade-offs clearly assessed and presented so that we can make an informed decision. I also want to add a couple of very practical day-to-day concerns that I've heard consistently from residents. The pinch points on the street, emergency vehicle access, and how those pressures can intensify during construction. Those are not theoretical concerns, and we need to be sure that they are addressed as this moves forward. As construction progresses, I'll be clear that I'll be watching this closely, and in concert with my colleague and friend Chair Turney, we'll keep an eye on construction-related impacts and how they can be managed in real time. Finally, I think there may be practical tools that we can explore to reduce pressure on on-street parking and visitor congestion on Duvernay. One idea worth exploring is a visitor parking pass option at Rayfriel, which would help alleviate neighborhood parking pressures during peak times and could also provide a modest revenue stream that supports the facility and Dan Chenier's group. Ultimately, my goal is to ensure that this development reflects both our city building objectives and the lived realities of the people who already called this community home. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Luloff. I don't see any other hands up. I am more confident that the traffic impacts can be managed here. I'm glad to see this building going in. I lived just on the other side of Des Epaulettes for about 5 years at the far end of Lamoureux, so I know the area well, and I'm pleased to see this type of housing move in there. Colleagues, is this item carried as recommended?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. Just make sure I got quorum. I do. Perfect. Thank you very much. So that is the end of the substantive agenda. There are no in-camera items. Are there any notices of motion for consideration at a subsequent meeting? Nope. I haven't received any inquiries at this point. Are there any? We have no other business. We're adjourned until our next meeting on March the 4th, 2026. Thank you very much, everyone. The next meeting. I'm cut off. I cut myself off. The joint meeting will start at 1 o'clock.